And now Fox News clown Trace Gallagher tries to mansplain renewable energy to the Secretary of Energy, Jennifer Granholm. Enjoy.
And the reason why we want it to be clean, in addition to the climate, is because solar, wind are cheaper in most places across the world, but definitely in the U.S.
But they're unreliable.
Than other forms of energy.
Secretary, they're unreliable.
No, they're not unreliable.
They are unreliable on the grids because it takes a lot of energy, electricity, to get them into the grid, or fossil fuels to get them onto the grid. And if you don't have, at nighttime, we don't have the battery power to store it. You have to use it or you lose it. And so it's unreliable in states like Texas, they found out. And that's a problem, is we need to come up with battery power to store that stuff.
Okay, Texas is the largest producer of both wind and solar, or 1 and 2. They are extremely important to adding clean energy to our grid. With respect to the intermittency, you say they're unreliable. They are intermittent because it doesn't always, the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow. But the battery technology that stores that is also incentivized in this Inflation Reduction Act. The technology is there. We just need to make sure that it's implemented. So the great thing is when you combine solar or wind with battery technology, that becomes like baseload power that is reliable, which is very exciting. Other forms of clean energy are also incentivized, like nuclear power, like hydroelectric power, like geothermal power. All of those are also incentivized in the Inflation Reduction Act, which will make us as a nation energy independent, which will make us allow us to get to our goals of 100% clean electricity by 2035 and net zero carbon pollution, which causes climate change, by 2050.
Stand up.
From a defabricated garden shed in Rockland County, New York, USA, this is Stand Up with Pete Dominic. On today's episode, tasty home remedies for that stubborn bout of who gives a crap, just drink it. And now, the podcast host who has plenty to drink and share now that he's all done lounging around, Pete Dominic!
Yes, indeed, Pete Co. Thank you very much. Great to be back after a week completely off from the podcast, but not from life. Thank you very much for returning with me to the show. Very happy to have you here. Congratulations to Pete Co, by the way. He just booked a gig as a voiceover artist narrating a children's book. Very excited for him. Very excited indeed. Also, I've got 3 things on today's show, including a final installment of Pete Co's Annoying American Abroad, where Pete talks to a woman in Finland. It's very funny and worth listening to just for the Finnish version of the DuckTales cartoon theme song. Also on the show today, the great Eric Segal, and a wonderful treat. I was talking to my dad off the air yesterday, and he mentioned that he loves when Eric Segal's on. He always have. They'd never talked. So today, while I had Eric on the phone, we surprised my dad at a clothing store, and while he was shopping for clothes, and he joined Eric to tell him how much he loves him, and it is really thoughtful and nice and worth hearing. I think you're going to like that. But first and foremost, I have a conversation. I mean, I don't know if it's foremost, but it's before most of it. How about that? I don't want to make any guest or segment sound more important than another, but I loved this conversation I had with 2 of my favorites, Noel Casler and Jay Black. Comedians Noel Casler and Jay Black joined me first, and I think you are going to love that conversation. So funny, thoughtful. Both these guys are just really great guys. Brilliant and hilarious. I'm so happy they joined me together on today's show. Quick thanks to Kim Nyborg, who is a longtime listener and subscriber, for tweeting out her favorite shows, which I shared each day on Twitter as well. That was awesome. Great to finally meet Karen Madison in person when we went together to the great Glenn Kirshner's subscriber event last Saturday night in Washington, D.C. That was a lot of fun, particularly this moment. I was one of the speakers at the event. Also there, by the way, it was Capitol Police Officers Michael Fanone and Harry Dunn, and Sergeant Aquilino Ganell was there as well. That was awesome meeting them and then hanging out with them as well. And I gave that whiskey or bourbon to Harry Dunn. Several listeners donated to Hero Capitol Police Officer Harry Dunn's bourbon fund, and there was like $350 worth of bourbon that we we gave him. So thank you to Will Power and everybody else who made donations. I mentioned Will because I think he gave like $100 of it. So very, very cool. And it was an awesome event. And at that event, Glenn's first granddaughter was there. Her name is Paz, and she was there with her mom, Glenn's daughter. And so he started talking and getting serious, and the little girl was running around the room and being distracted. So I picked her up. She's got to be only like a year old. Anyway, I ran her up to her grandfather, who was in the middle of his opening remarks, and I just thought it was a poignant moment that I could share with you, and I was happy to be a little part of it. This was fun.
And I am so thrilled to see many of you back from last year, and we're going to do it next year. And next year we're going to celebrate the indictments.
Tell us about the indictments, Grandpa.
Yay! Hey, I got to take a minute now. That is our beloved Paz Laura. That's our first grandchild. And boy, I thought having 5 daughters and a son was pretty good, pretty cool. Not always a ton of fun, but and then we had the first grandchild come along, and holy smokes! I know plenty of y'all are grandparents, but I didn't know this is what it would feel like. So I'm so glad that Paz could join us this evening, and some of you all could get to see her and meet her.
All right. Well, that was a fun moment from Glenn Kushner's subscriber event in D.C. I hope to host one of my own pretty soon. Welcome to new subscribers. Very happy to have all of you supporting me. Hopefully didn't lose any while I was gone. One listener is like, I'm starting to get worried because I wasn't on last week, and I'm here. I took the week completely off. Another listener said, Pete, maybe next time you could pre-tape some evergreen interviews and drop them in. I've always been doing that. I've taken time off from the show, but I would always pre-tape things and then post them, but I'd be a nervous wreck, and I'd be posting while on my vacation. And I also just had to do that much more work to bank those interviews. So I just said this time it was spur of the moment. I'm just going to take the week completely off. So hopefully that was okay. I know a lot of you missed the show and reached out to me, and that made me feel good. I'm very happy to be back here with you, though. And I really didn't do anything. I didn't do anything special. I ran errands. I fixed cars. I hate car dealerships. Does anybody know anything about a car dealership? Anybody work in the automobile manufacturing industry? Call me. I want to interview you. The secrets of car dealerships are, I want to know everything. If anybody's written that book, I'd love to talk to them. What a scam they are. Looks like my first Chevy Volt, the one with 170,000 miles on it, is dead for good. And when I dropped it off at the dealership, because that's the only place you can drop these electric cars, more on that some other time. Just most mechanics don't know how to work on electric cars. At least that's my understanding, being the owner of now two. And at the end of his list of repairs he told me this car needed, he told me it was going to cost $16,000 with a straight face. That's what he said. An automobile with 170,000 miles on it in your care, you list all of the things that you need, and then you say that's going to be $16,000. And then I'm left to say, well, that doesn't seem worth it. So I'm not sure if she's completely dead. I guess she's drivable, but it's a sad day when the first Chevy Volt goes down to two cars. Again, such is life. At least I got the pool finally working here at the end of the summer, and then the pool place sent a flyer that said, time to think about closing your pool. Just on time. Wow, the obstacles, the first world problems. I've got my health, so does my family. You'll hear from my dad today. Also saw my parents, took my dad to a Yankee game. That was a lot of fun. Continued with my meditation practice every day, and I highly recommend everybody go get everything that Pema Chodron has written. You've heard me mention her probably 3-4 times in the last couple weeks. The book particularly that I'm loving is Taking the Leap. And I saw Joe Liotta, listener, friend, stop by the house while I was on break, and I gave him a copy because I just bought 2. I highly recommend you get that book, and we'll talk about it. And I'm going to be having more guests like her, maybe even her, on the show to talk about what they know best, which is living with less suffering in life, finding more joy, avoiding stress and emotional reactions and anxiety, and being able to sleep better and just live better without so much so many dramatic issues in our lives, and everybody needs a teacher, I think. And I have had so many, and she's my newest. I can't get enough of her work. And I hope to have more of those conversations right here, like at least once a week, those types of conversations. That is one thing I thought about doing more here on the podcast. I didn't come up with any ingenious new podcast changing innovations for the show, but I'm still working on it. You know, I'm still in transitioning, by the way, back into school for all those of you who have school age kids or are going to school yourself. It's that time of year. So best of luck. I have an amazing lineup of guests joining me, and I'm going to get to my first one right now. But just a heads up, I'm going to try to maybe, I say this, you know me, I'm never really good for my word and being consistent with these types of things, but I'm going to try to book the show further ahead of time, and then we can promote and preview the show, and you can know who's on. But coming up this week, I've booked some great guests, including on today's show. I've also got Dave Rothkopf, Wajahat Ali, Amy Westervelt for the first time. Virginia Heffernan is back. Dr. Aaron Carroll, Bill B. in D.C. Anya Kamenetz, speaking of education, she's got a great new book about what children lost in the COVID years. And speaking of education children, the president of the Florida Education Association, Andrew Spar, scheduled to join me as well. So a great lineup of guests joining me this week. Who do you want to hear? I always want to hear from you about anything to do with the show, how to make it better, more thoughtful, more positive, more informative, more responsible, more anything. I do it every day, and I'd love to hear from you. So email me, standupwithpete@gmail.com. I will get to your email, hopefully get back to you. And join us in the stand-up community right now, standupwithpete.com. You can be on the Discord chat, which is active 24/7, and join us every Thursday night for our Thursday night hangouts, which have become really legend and epic in many of our lives. I always look forward to them and look forward to this one this week, especially because I missed you last week. Oh, and Indeed.com back sponsoring the show. So please go to Indeed.com/standupwithpete right now if you're looking to hire someone at your job, at your firm, at your company. I'll talk more about it later. But yeah, can't do the show without your subscriptions. So sign up now. And those of you who have edited their pledge subscription up, that is amazing. Even if it's just $5 more a month, it's huge. And you can do that now as well. Thank you very much to all those who have done that already. All right, well, let's get to the show, to my guests, I should say, joining me on today's show. First, I already mentioned everybody that's on, but first I've got comedians Jay Black and Noel Casler. They're both hilarious, smart veterans of show business. Jay is also a screenwriter. He has written screenplays. He joined me a couple weeks ago. You may have heard him here on the show just then, but he's joined me with Noel many times before as well. And Noel is a long-time entertainment everything. He's an artist. He helps artists. He knows everybody. He worked on The Apprentice for years, and his podcast is really good. I highly recommend you check that out, the Noel Casler podcast. And he and Jay and I are hopefully going to do some comedy dates together soon. We'll certainly let you know if we book any. But Noel Casler, Jay Black, follow them both on Twitter, where they are awesome. And to learn more, check out the links in today's show notes. But let's do it, boys. First guest back, and they do not disappoint. All right, there they are. I've just told you all about them. It's Noel Casler, Jay Black. We've got the band back together. Very happy to have you both back. Thank you both again for joining me.
Great to be here.
I like it. I like to leave that pause and then let both guests say something at the same time. They they do that on cable a lot. And
if we're a band, I think Pete, you are drums. Noel, you are guitar. And I'm the bassist, but only because I'm your friends. You know what I mean? Like I come in and I'm like okay at the bass, and Pete, you kind of like bring me along. But I think that's how it would break down.
Well, I think that's right. Except for Noel knows everything about music. He's a musician. What is like me being the drummer make me in general? What's that stereotype? I'm not sure if I'm comfortable.
Well, I don't know what Noel would say. I thought you keep the time, baby. You keep us all together. You're the glue that holds this band together.
Oh, I like that. Is that right, Noel? Or do I?
That's correct. Yeah, and replaceable. You know.
Well, speaking of replaceable, I wanted to start our conversation today talking with you guys about Jared Kushner, because I wanted, by the way, your podcast is so good, Noel. There's not many people who can just talk alone and it being enjoyable to listen to. But it's so great. I learned a lot. Also, Jay is here. But Noel talks about Jared Kushner. He's got a new book. It's called, I think it's called Breaking History. Is that right? Yeah. And the New York Times savaged it. They write, Breaking History is an earnest and soulless. Kushner looks like a mannequin, and he writes like one. A peculiarly selective appraisal of Donald J. Trump's term in office. Kushner almost entirely ignores the chaos, the alienation of allies, the breaking of laws and norms, of rotations with dictators, the comprehensive loss of America's moral leadership, and so on. And they just go on to just savage him like I've never seen anything. But Noel, I like what you have to say about Jared Kushner, which is quite a bit. So let it rip. What do you will you be buying his new book?
I will not be buying the book, and I love that New York Times review as well. And Kushner is like a mini Trump. It's no accident that Ivanka married him. She married her father in many ways. And the fact that he's soulless in the same way and self-serving in the same way. And the fact that he would be so tone deaf to even release a book, and he doesn't need the money. He got $2 billion from the Saudi Arabians, as we well know, for his hedge fund, of which he has no institutional investment experience. So let me know how that works out, And that, not to mention the $640 million they made while working in the White House, he and his wife. So, it's sort of the apex of ignorance that you could expect from that clan. And I'll say one more thing. Jared was always the guy playing the long game. When I worked around them, it was Ivanka and Jared who sort of had the big picture. Trump wants music to play when he walks in a room. He wants to hit on women. He wants to fill that narcissistic hole inside of them. Where I saw them playing it a little closer to the vest in terms of long game, so I think he was obviously instrumental in getting Trump elected. If anyone's done a deep dive, it was Kushner who got the micro targeting going on Facebook, finding the guys in Michigan that had voted for Obama, but also had an NRA sticker and a Kid Rock CD in their car. He was able to sort of target the right demographic, and he masterminded that campaign in many ways, along with Manafort and probably Vladimir Putin. But that being said, it was Kushner who would have told Trump what documents to steal. It was Kushner who would have been eyeing how profitable a presidency can be. And we saw that in their pandemic response, right? Kushner was put in charge of it. He shook down blue states. He withheld PPE from governors for political gain. And that's not only soulless, it's criminal and immoral.
I was always so offended by the idea that any politician from mayor, Jay, to governor would appoint a family member to a job. Doesn't matter what government job you have. You don't appoint your family member, much less like a friend of a friend can look bad. Jay, what's the greatest thing your dad ever did for you? And what are your thoughts on Kushner?
The greatest thing my dad ever did for me was probably not hugging me enough, which allowed me to become a comedian.
Yes.
It was like a 1-2 punch. It was like, if he had hugged me 3 more times, I'd be an accountant.
Did he ever get you a job? A job?
No, in fact, one of the things he said to me, because he was a banker. He was a investment banker. And I went to college at first for economics. And I was like, you know what? This is fun, but I want to be an English major. Let me go do that, which my dad was thrilled about because, the economic return on an English degree is just phenomenal, especially from a New Jersey State college. But he said, if you had gone economics, I could have opened every door for you and you would have been fine. And one of the things he always said to me was, I'm very proud of you for not taking a job where I couldn't help you one little bit. There was no door I could have opened. There was no help I could have given you. And that always kind of stuck in my head as sort of like these guys fashion themselves as these manly men, right? They're on their own. They're the Sigma males who are out there by themselves creating a better world. But they can't do any of that without this very sort of thorny nest that they've built for themselves of not just nepotism, but also glad handing and the whole boys network. And that, when they hate the word privilege because they know that they have so much of it. And we all have it here too. Don't get us wrong. You know, like we white men have a lot of privilege, but white rich men who look like soulless plastic Ken dolls have the most of it. And Jared Kushner is proof of that.
So much more to say about Jared Kushner, but we do have to get to the most important piece of news and person potentially, and I got to ask Noel about it. That's Gary Busey. Gary Busey apparently was arrested for sexual assault while at some kind of a weekend movie event, a horror fest or something. I don't know why he was there. But Noel, of course, you worked with Gary Busey and Celebrity Apprentice. You tweeted, when Gary Busey groped a staffer on Celebrity Apprentice, Trump laughed about it, kept him on the show, as did Mark Burnett, the God-fearing Christian whose born-again batshit wife famously starred in Touched by an Angel. Facts. The shit that you know is just so valuable. Were you shocked by Gary Busey's arrest?
No, not at all. Not at all. And it happened in Jersey, too, by the way, Jay.
Oh, is that right?
And Gary Busey, he didn't just grope a staffer. He grabbed a female staffer's hand and put it on his crotch. And Trump laughed it off. Mark Burnett laughed it off. The Daily Beast actually did a piece on it in 2016. But like everything else, it wasn't one of those things that stuck to Trump because mainstream media wasn't that interested in talking about that kind of stuff. You know, Gary Busey is obviously a loose cannon. I think we all know that, you know, and like the fact that he was on Celebrity Apprentice, that he behaved that way, that, you know, Celebrity Apprentice was an NBC property. Jeff Zucker was the head of NBC Entertainment when that all went down. And it still didn't make big news at the time. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah, like the fact that stuff was permitted. And I worked at NBC a lot in those days. Those were the same years that Matt Lauer had a lock on his door. You know, it was, you know. And I was actually working on the tree lighting for NBC the morning Matt got arrested. He was our host that night. And I showed up to the production office. They're like, our host just left the building under escort. Yeah. But nobody was surprised. And my point is that was a time in the entertainment business when that kind of behavior was laughed off and allowed because the people at the top were making money for the right people. And, you know, it just reflects on Trump and that kind of attitude. You could say Trump isn't involved, but he was involved because he laughed it off. He literally laughed it off. Like, no big deal. Boys will be boys. Well, I do it all the time. Trump was groping people, you know?
Let's move on to another important person. This is Liz Cheney. She lost her primary election to one of you made a joke. I think it was one of you guys about whoever she lost, the lady she looks like. Maybe it wasn't, but it was funny and mean. But Jay, you tweeted, watching Liz Cheney concede her election. Imagine that. Someone losing an election and not pretending that secret cabal of George Soros, the ghost of Hugo Chavez, and the Taco Bell dog rigged it against her. What are your thoughts about Liz Cheney and her future, Jay, and then Noel?
Well, you know, I keep hearing a lot about her with a strategy for 2024, which seems ridiculous to me, just in the sense of like, I should say it doesn't seem ridiculous because I don't think she's a competent politician. It seems ridiculous to me because I can't personally see a path that she could go, because progressives will never accept her. I don't know if you guys have put out any kind of positive Liz Cheney tweet, but anytime you do, you get, 40% of the responses are, she's not on our side, right? And it's like, I know she's not on our side. I know that. Like, I don't agree with her about anything except for the small matter of that America should be a democracy. That's it. But like, that's the primary thing that we need to fix in the next 2 to 5 years. And then everything else can be debated after that. Like, if we don't have a democracy, it doesn't matter where your stance is on anything, because it's all going to be done by the guy in charge, which would be either Trump or DeSantis if we allow that to happen. So, the big argument that I have with those people is we need to embrace Liz Cheney. I don't think we would need to embrace her as a candidate. I don't know what her plans are, but like, certainly she could put herself into a very good position to be a very powerful voice against Trump and, hopefully gather reasonable Republicans out of the path of a 2024 victory.
My favorite thing, Noel, about Liz Cheney's campaign was when her dad cut an ad for her, Dick Cheney, and he savaged Donald Trump in that ad, and he got savaged by everyone on social media. Like, fuck you, we didn't forget what you did, motherfucker. Like, no one was like, nice work, thanks, Dick.
Absolutely. And, I'd just like to say, if I run off the road in a snowstorm in Wyoming and wake up in a rustic bed a couple days later, Harriet Hageman is the girl who's coming through the door, right? She's like out of misery.
I love your tweets, Noel.
Thank you. I'm your number one fan, You're not going anywhere. But it's like Crazy Eyes, right? They're picking the candidates that are just clearly out of their minds. And it's so easy. The formula they've developed is so easy, right? Because they just say
the woman who beat Liz Cheney. And in case anybody missed it, Noel was making a reference to Misery with Kathy. Go ahead, sir.
Exactly. And, it's so easy. They can throw any candidate up there as long as they're espousing the big lie. And like Jay said, it's a dangerous phenomena to get into sort of nitpicking. Nobody's trying to make Liz Cheney, the head of the DNC or our next nominee. But we have to welcome Republicans that are willing to stand up to it, because there's nothing on the other side of this. You get a President DeSantis and it's game over for democracy. And we all know that.
Well, let's speculate, gentlemen, and say anything you want about Ron DeSantis. Can Ron DeSantis beat Donald Trump in a primary? And is Donald Trump running, Jay?
I don't know if Donald Trump is running. I think my guess would be he would pull the trigger on that, depending on how close he is to an indictment. I would imagine his strategy would be run for office and then try to obfuscate all of the legal problems as being an attack on a political opponent, and try to use all the stuff about the Ukrainian phone call against Democrats by going, well, you're just trying to get dirt on me because I'm running against your guy. So far as DeSantis beating him, I think in their heart of their little tiny black hearts, Republicans want Ron DeSantis. I think that the rational part of the irrationals, meaning the MAGA who are not completely over into cult land, understand that DeSantis will get their evil agenda done in a way that Donald Trump could not. So I feel like all those guys, like, Alex Jones took a toe into the DeSantis pool this week, got a lot of blowback and had to do an apology video.
He did. I did not know that. I knew that he came out and he kind of criticized Trump. Like, Trump's done. I don't like Trump. DeSantis is the real thing, and demon blood.
And by the way, that is an awesome Alex Jones. Is that your only impression? Did you do others? That's excellent.
It's an impression of my former producer's impression, and it's not a hard impression. But go ahead. What did he say?
Well, he basically came out and said, the mainstream media, see, I can't even do it. The mainstream media took my 30 seconds out of context to make it look like I was bashing Trump. Same thing he always says, that there's a team of editors working around the clock that make him look bad. And it's not just his words making him look bad. But I feel like this is kind of how they do it. They take a step forward and then they take a half a step back, a step forward. I don't think there's any kind of coordination behind the scenes, but if I were trying to get my agenda across, I would want DeSantis over Trump because he'll actually get it done. And don't take that as a compliment. Please don't anybody post, well, Jay, what do you want DeSantis? No, he's evil. He's just evil in an efficient way. And I think that's what they want from him.
Noel, is Donald Trump running?
I don't think he's going to run. I think he'll run in terms of the campaign contributions. He'll run on the grift because he's making $1 million a day now since the FBI's subpoena. But what I think he'll do, and it's just hypothetical, but I think he'll run for a while, collect the money, and then cut a deal and sort of throw his support to DeSantis, right? With the caveat that he gets a pardon when DeSantis gets elected, or that DeSantis chooses a running mate that Trump gets to pick, a Don Jr. or an MTG, or some Kerry Lake or something just as awful. But I agree with Jay and with what you said, Pete. DeSantis is Trump with self-discipline. Right. He's a sober Trump. He's crazy and an asshole in every way. Right. But he's not the sloppy mess that Trump is. So if you're a Leonard Leo who just got $1.6 billion today for his new, Federalist Society project, who do you want? Who do you want in charge of the purse strings? Donald Trump or a DeSantis who will let you do anything you want in a sort of fundamentalist fashion as long as he gets to be king? And that's terrifying. I think they always knew that Trump didn't really believe it. It was always about Trump. Trump's not really anti-abortion. Like, come on. You know what I mean? These other guys, they're sort of more dyed-in-the-wool conservatives in many ways. And I think DeSantis will be very appealing to the GOP.
I think you're right about that, and we will be right back to the show, but I gotta quickly tell you that if your business is your dream, you want the people who share it and have the skills to help it grow. Find them faster with Indeed. See, Indeed is a hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. So instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed's a powerful hiring partner that can help you do it all. Find great talent faster through time-saving tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. With Instant Match, over 80% of employees get quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. Lots of listeners have used Indeed, and they have loved it, finding great superstars working at their companies, firms, bakeries, and so on. Join more than 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Indeed is an unbelievably powerful hiring partner, delivering 4 times more hires than all other job sites combined. And even better, Indeed's the only job site where you only pay for applications that meet your must-have requirements. So start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/standup. The offer's good for a limited time only. Claim your $75 credit now at Indeed.com/standup. Indeed.com/standup. Terms and conditions apply. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. And now back to my hilarious and insightful conversation with Jay Black and Noel Casler. Ad-free versions of the podcast will be emailed to you every morning. Subscribe at standupwithpete.com. My favorite phrase to refer to the right-wing political movement, dominant movement, and I think I heard you say this, Noel, in your latest episode, is Christo-fascist or Christian fascist. And I wonder sometimes if there'll be a divide in the Republican Party, the conservative movement, right-wing movement, between those who are super overtly Christian and want to crack down on women and LGBT equality and make sure that God is in our schools. As you just saw in Texas there, you have to put up a "In God We Trust" sign in your classroom, which I encourage young people to, as I call it, participate in creative mischief with those signs, because I know I would have. But what do you think, Jay, about Christian fascism and you know, the leaders of it, including I thought of it because of DeSantis. I mean, he plays footsie or not footsie. He is a Christo-fascist.
Yeah, well, you kind of have to, you know, you need to have people who believe without reason to kind of come over to some of the Republican way of thinking on things, because, you know, we have to, Christo-fascism and, you know, modern conservatism are a very easy marriage, because you don't want to believe in global warming. Well, just don't believe it. Right? The power of your belief is the only thing that matters, right? You think that trans people are evil? Just believe that trans people are evil. It doesn't matter that there are biological underpinnings to the things that they want to do, or psychological underpinnings. So I think that marriage is an easy one. I don't think that there's ever going to be a divide, right? I held hope for a long time that the people who were conservative because they believed in an economic system that favored private industry versus public support would eventually get away from the crazy. They haven't. They had 7 years. The ones that did were vilified and attacked, and they're out there. What they're saying. You know, Tom Nichols just said it recently. By the way, I love Tom Nichols. I don't know if you guys follow him.
Tommy's been on. Yeah.
Tom Nichols said there's only one choice if you are a Republican who believes in Republican values, and that's to vote Democrat. That's it. There's 2 choices. There's crazy and there's Democrat. And I don't know if there's a lot of people in the Midwest with Punisher stickers on their Jeeps that are ever going to vote Democrat, even if they don't believe in all the other stuff.
Well, Noel, you mentioned that almost $2 billion windfall that Leonard Leo's new group got. Leonard Leo, of course, is a kingmaker in conservative politics, and Noel is one of the most prolific commentators on dark money this side of Jane Meyer. who didn't actually get this scoop. This is from the New York Times. But does, the Leonard Leo and the Supreme Court justices, who you could describe as Christian fascists to some extent, I mean, do the huge Republican donors, the Steve Winns and so on, do they care at all about religion, or are they just, their thoughts are basically in line with it?
No, they care about money. None of this stuff is ideologically based in terms of religious, deeply held beliefs. They're trying to protect their way of life. They don't want to pay taxes on those billions of dollars. So it's easier to pay $1.6 billion to a Leonard Leo, who, if your listeners don't know, he was the head of the Federalist Society and the chief architect of the conservative Supreme Court that recently rolled back Roe v. Wade. And to give you an example of his power, when Trump was president-elect, right, 2 days after November 6th, 2016, Leonard Leo walked into Trump's private office at Trump Tower, handed him a list with 8 names on it, and said, you can pick any of these people to be on the Supreme Court. But this is the only people you get to choose from. Yep. And 3 of those people now sit on the Supreme Court. 3 of those names now have lifetime appointments. So that's who Leonard Leo is. And that's what really matters to these conservatives. And they don't care about abortion. They care about protecting their right to pollute, their right to exploit, their right to cut entitlements to guarantee generations of workforce people that they can grind up, like cattle and never take care of. It's basically a kleptocracy. It's what they did in the Soviet Union. That's what these guys are trying to bring to America. And they've been wildly successful ever since Citizens United. Yeah. The religion is how they couch this stuff, because it's a hot button term. It gets the idiot with the Punisher sticker to think he's a good guy and a Christian, because he's standing with the NRA and Donald Trump. But, these guys would recoil at real religion, at the teachings of Jesus, right? It's got nothing to do with actual spirituality.
Well, their Jesus is different than the Jesus that many of us, I think, grew to learn. Their Jesus has an ammo belt, I think, and Donald Trump's face.
Well, he killed a whole group of people with only 7 bullets. He had 7 bullets, and that was the miracle. They were like, you can't kill all these people. You don't have enough bullets. And at the end of the day, they're all dead.
How do I massacre with 7? And then he waved his hand. And
Republican Jesus said, we're good. If I could just say one thing about the religious part of it, too, just to carry on with what Noel was saying, they do couch it with that. And the people who follow them are true believers. I believe that the Republican Midwestern housewife who is voting for them because they're going to stop abortion really does care about abortion. Yeah. Those guys are going to get abortions for their mistresses, regardless of the state of the law, with no repercussion. They're going to have access to whatever materials they want. It's the porn in Osama bin Laden's room, situation. I'm going to kill the West for their decadence, but I'll be in here masturbating furiously to mid-90s porn.
We don't know that porn was actually bin Laden's. It could have been anybody's. Defending bin Laden.
Pete has used that excuse with his wife a few times, just like me. I don't know who put this on here.
She's really concerned. Noel, to Jay's point, you tweeted the smug arrogance of Kari Lake, who's now the Republican nominee for governor in Arizona and believes in magic. The smug arrogance of Kari Lake, DeSantis, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and the rest of the mediocre fascists humping MAGA bile is not out of respect and idolatry of Trump. It's that they saw how inferior, debased, and downright dumb he is, and that folks bought it. Quote, if that idiot can do it, so can I, which is, I think, what Jay is saying about they're just using it to get rubes to vote for them.
100%. And Jay makes an excellent point that I didn't get to. The people do believe it. That's what's so horrific about this. They're exploiting people who actually believe this stuff, and that's everyone's right. But that's dangerous, because when you tap into somebody's religiosity, you're tapping into something deeper than their political beliefs. You're tapping into their heritage. Their grandfather was a Christian. It becomes personal, and people will do all kinds of stuff when they think they're protecting their God and their family. And that's, again, what's so dangerous about this, because these men are just exploiting it. Like Jay said, they're going to get what they need.
But are we? I'm being serious. I sometimes feel like we're too harsh on a certain segment of our population, and I'll describe them not as obviously not politically savvy, but they're the kind of people who buy whatever is being sold on TV. They're the kind of people who buy the weight loss pills that Dr. Oz was selling for so long, calling a miracle. And they're the kind of people who will give anybody, $50,000 to invest. They get taken advantage of so much. Jay tweeted, "I'm surprised Dr. Oz isn't selling his sawdusted sarsaparilla supplements." To the people who are still coming to his rallies. After all, they're a self-selected group of credulous rubes, and he's definitely going to lose, so might as well go out as he came in, preying on ignorance. I have a certain sympathy for the people, and we all know them, who buy the knives that don't actually cut anything.
Yeah, well, the Founding Fathers, which is, whenever somebody says the Founding Fathers, some important stuff's coming out. They were a group of elitist liberals who were highly educated, and they thought that a rational world would exist where highly educated people would make decisions based on reason and rationality. And everything that has happened since then has proven that is not the case at all. That if something is put into mass media in any way, shape, or form, everyone will buy it to a certain degree. And the problem is the First Amendment does not provide protection against propaganda or lies. Right. It really doesn't. And that's, every once in a while you see people say, like, defund Fox News. There should be regulations. We can't have a First Amendment and a regulated Fox News. Like, the two things don't go together. And what you're seeing is a Republican movement to eliminate the one last barrier against that, which is education. Yep. Their entire movement right now is homeschool your kids. You can't trust the liberal. Charlie Kirk, idiot, has written a book that don't go to college. They don't want you to go to college because the less you are educated, the more you'll believe whatever's put out there. And I think that's where the evil is.
Noel, do you have any sympathy for these folks that are?
Yes, I have a great amount of sympathy, and I'm glad you pointed that out because it doesn't get pointed out a lot, especially, with me, I'm a comedian. I'm making generalizations and I'm being very snarky. And, I feel very sorry for these people. They don't have the money to give. I was having a conversation with somebody the other day and I said, Trump's making $1 million a day since the FBI thing. He's grifting these people. And they said, I don't feel sorry for them. And I said, I do. Because they're getting taken advantage of and they're conned and they believe it. And that $50 or $500 or $5,000, that's an inheritance that somebody else's kid or grandkid isn't going to see someday because they sent it to Donald Trump. That's somebody who doesn't get a mortgage payment when they get married, and he's picking on these people. He's done it his whole career. When he owned those casinos, he would bus in old ladies from Ohio and Tennessee and take their Social Security checks and send them back home without a free lunch. I feel very sorry for these people because they're the ones who are going to suffer the most. We're going to be fine here on Nantucket. You know what I mean? It's like, but those guys don't have it to give and times are getting hard and they're only getting harder. And it breaks my heart. I don't begrudge somebody their ignorance. They've had humanities and public education, like Jay said, sucked out of their lives since Reagan, and they don't even know how to react and they think they're doing the right thing.
Where I lose a little bit of sympathy, though, guys, is when you are confronted with a moment of cognitive dissonance, right? Where you are, Trump is all good. Then you see Trump is stealing nuclear secrets, right? That's a moment of cognitive dissonance. And people solve cognitive dissonance is one of two ways: by changing their mind or glossing over the facts and manipulating the facts in their brain to make it work. Well, so they hear that and they go, well, the FBI must be planting evidence, right? That's how they've enough cognitive dissonance at a certain point. That's a you problem. And I really do think, like, if every time I open a box of Cheerios, there is a one jagged metal O from The Simpsons in there, and I tear up my intestines, at a certain point, I should stop trusting the Cheerios box, right? Just stop opening the Cheerios box. That's a me problem. That's where I lose sympathy.
Well, there goes my Cheerios sponsorship, but I still have Fruit Loops. Well, but the best example of cognitive dissonance might just be that you thought the vaccine was had a microchip in it, and then you died.
Right.
There you go.
By the way, it's been 18 months since mine, and the 5G is as strong as ever, boys.
Your signal is pulsating. All right, last question. Probably the biggest story is it's being called The Raid, and Noel called it The Raid in his latest podcast. Then he corrected himself. And then I think I'm going to take what you said is like, it's an executed search warrant or a search of his home for things that aren't his. And I'm sure probably almost everything in his home isn't his. But you also said the phrase that I hate the most, Noel, but you couched it. You said the walls might just be closing in. And I think it's clear. Just tell me what walls. Are they the political walls for his political future? Are they the money walls for his future finance or his family? Because they're definitely not what a lot of us want to believe, jail cell walls. And I think you even say that. So let's get to and talk about what this means, the search of his home and your thoughts on it, Noel.
Yeah, it's the narcissistic walls, right? He's certainly never going to spend a night in a jail cell. I know people think that's going to happen. I don't believe that's ever going to happen. You're not going to see Trump in a prison jumpsuit, doing time off. Weisselberg, 5 months, right?
We got him, boys.
5 months.
We did it.
You know what I mean? Look, I've been raided by the FBI.
5 months. I'm sorry, 5 months in prison when you're, 75, 76? I heard he was at Rikers. Like, that's not how you want to be spending 5 months of your 76th year. But go ahead, Noel. Sorry.
No doubt. No, and Rikers should be shut down. I mean, it's a humanitarian crisis. But, the walls are closing. That's a great example, Pete. Weisselberg had to cop to a plea, has to take a sentence. The FBI did come into Mar-a-Lago. Trump isn't used to that. You got to understand, and you do understand this, but the first time the DOJ opened an investigation to Trump and his father was 1973 for housing discrimination, right? And he's done everything with impunity. Here's a guy who sexually assaulted somebody in Bergdorf Goodman and walked back down to his office down the street, a famous woman that he knew. It wasn't like he was wearing a ski mask in an alley, right? It was a famous woman that he knew, and he thought he'd get away with it. I say that because it goes to this guy's character. He's not used to being told no. So while I don't think he'll spend a night in jail, I think the ego thing has been punctured. I think he is on the ropes in many ways, just based on the guy I knew. But you're right. We're not going to really ever get the justice we want because he's already 76 years old, And I mean, the fact that he has the GOP saying defund the FBI is insanity.
Yeah.
I got raided by the FBI. When I was 13 years old, the FBI came into my apartment, kicked in my door, stuck a shotgun in my face and said, "Freeze, FBI," and they saw it was a kid, and looked at a Stones poster on my wall and were like, "You like the Stones?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "All right, all clear in here." And they just backed out of the room. They took my mom, who had made her way into the bathroom, and took her out of the apartment. She had robbed banks. She was involved in heavy drug use in the early 80s. And she went into banks and handed the teller a slip and said, "Give me the money," and she did it several times until she got caught because she was out of her mind on drugs. She's sober today, right? She went to federal prison for 5 years from that. I didn't see my mom again for 5 years, except for when I visited her in prison.
Jesus.
My point being, I don't have any beef against the FBI. I didn't have a lifetime grudge that they were not within their means. The FBI doesn't come to your house unless they need to come to your house, right? It's a system of law and order, and nobody more than Republicans has worshipped authority and law and order. So to see, right? It's always the cops and the vets, So to see them do this based on nothing, to attack and dox FBI agents, right? They're planning on releasing the surveillance video so they can give up the names of these FBI agents, guys who have wives and kids that are doing their jobs, man,
My whole life, I was led to believe, certain people you don't mess around with, right? And I'm hoping against hope. I thought when they went after Liz Cheney, the dark heart of Dick Cheney would wake up and he would it would be like a movie where he would call in the old neocons for one last job to take Trump down like they did in the early 2000s. That didn't happen. I really hope that the FBI, who, if they do get a grudge against you, could make your life difficult, right? I mean, they can. I really hope they take a real big grudge against all the people that are currently yelling at them. And I really do. I want all those things that when I was growing up, you don't ever say, don't even say a threat against anybody because they'll show right up. I don't know if you remember that old State episode where they just mentioned you can't even make a threat against the president and they get taken out by the Secret Service. I want that to happen to all of these guys. I want the FBI to seek their revenge in a way that J. Edgar Hoover led me to believe they would. That's what I want to see, a bunch of people in dresses taking these people out.
Probably not going to happen, but I do appreciate
your extrajudicial wish for the FBI, you know?
Yes. Just make their life difficult. I'm not saying extrajudicial. Extrajudicial.
Can I say, to your point, they're also saying defund the IRS, and the IRS can make your life difficult, right? You want to know somebody who can put a fly in your ointment. The IRS can do it with a push of a button. Like
there also is a right-wing conspiracy that the IRS is now armed with like a whole enforcement. They do have like, a certain amount of agents that are part of it. Like every other federal government agency has a certain enforcement. Fish and Wildlife does, where they carry a pistol. But it's not like they say. I mean, it's just I want the IRS to be able to collect money from people. I think paying your taxes is part of a civilized society. Finally, Jay tweets, you got to end on this one. This is tragic and kind of funny, but really sad. My brother drank himself into a coma, woke up, got clean, and then died 3 years later from the damage he did to his liver. And then there's Mike Lindell, made mostly out of trucker meth and mustache dye, alive and surrounded by imaginary goblins. The universe is pretty unfair. Noel, what is your reaction to his universe is pretty unfair anecdote about his brother versus Mike Lindell? Because I think about that a lot.
So do I. It's completely unfair, and I'll use Donald Trump. I've never seen a guy abuse his body more than that. And he's just going strong, and guys half his age drop dead. So there's no rhyme or reason when it comes to addiction and self-abuse, but it's insane. It's insane to watch. And just for your listeners, my mom is fine and sober today, and went to hell and back. And if you are struggling with that stuff, get help. There's no shame in addiction. I'm in recovery myself, but you will do real damage to your body,
By the way, that tweet, Pete got retweeted by, what's his name? Kurt Schlichter, the MAGA guy. He's got like 500,000 followers, and his quote tweet was, "These are the morals of the people who consider themselves our betters," was his quote tweet. Like saying, like, he was when you're rushing to the aid of Mike Lindell, take a moment, just take a moment, stop, look in the mirror and say, what am I doing? Where am I in life that this is what I'm doing?
It's an interesting, though, point that like, it's a reflection of one's morality. What you're saying is we've all done this. And Noel just made the point, like, there are people who do terrible things their entire lives, and they don't deal with some kind of, health issue or tragedy in their life. Right. And there's a lot we can say around that, but like, that's all you were saying. But I guess he's going to defend someone like Mike Lindell, who is, I don't know, if you want to try really hard, you could have, he's clearly he's clearly a broken guy.
Yeah. Yeah. But whether or not he's back on the drugs, I mean, I think he is. But either way, he was in his underwear in that video. Did you know that?
I saw the video. He was broadcasting live TV in a suit on, but he was not wearing pants, but he was outside and like on the sidewalk, like maybe outside his hotel. And he got berated by some guy, which is really fun.
Yeah. I mean, this crazy. Is the world that they have designed, is that Mike Lindell has power. That he has a voice and people are listening to him. And you talk about cognitive dissonance. In any other world, you'd go, this is clearly a lunatic. Let's stop listening to him. But because he's saying the things that Trump likes, there are hundreds of people, thousands of people who are like, you can't, the guy's you can't make fun of him. He's a wonderful man. He's not. He's a guy who sells pillows and does trucker meth. That's what he is. And whether or not that makes him a bad person doesn't make him a political person.
Yeah, and he's a total Christian fascist. All right, well, gentlemen, it is so great catching up with you. I could keep on going, but I'm sure you have better things to do. I really appreciate you joining me. It's a great to have you guys back on my first day back from being a week off. I love having you. I was like, who do I want? And I was like, these two guys, so funny, so smart, so thoughtful. Jay Black, Noel Casler, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Welcome back, Pete.
Thank you.
There you go, Jay Black, Noel Casler. Do yourself a favor and follow them on Twitter. If you're not on Twitter, go sign up for Twitter and follow those two guys alone. Absolutely worth it. And go say hi to them as well. Thank them for joining me on the first show back after my staycation. So much fun. I love their perspective, and they're such good guys, really thoughtful guys who've both been through a lot, seen a lot in life, and are happy to talk about it and share it in the way that they do, which I think is unique and special and hilarious. So love them both and look forward to talking with them a lot more. Okay. Well, another guy I love a lot is Eric Segal. He, of course, is a constitutional law scholar at Georgia State University, the author of 2 books, Originalism as Faith, Supreme Myths, host of the podcast Supreme Myths. He blogs at Dorf on Law, great blog that we touch on today that you should go read about why the court is not a court, which he's been saying for years. He's on Twitter at eSpinSegal, and I love following him there. He's become really, really respected over the time that I've been talking to him alone because of how much that he has been right about in terms of the Supreme Court, the Constitution, and so much more. We start off today's conversation with a special moment because we called my dad. My dad's a big Eric Segal fan. They've never talked, and so you get to hear that and absolutely love it. All right, here we go. I called him yesterday. This is how I always call him, Siegel. It's just better. I think he's better on the phone, so that's why I do it that way. Hopefully the sound quality is more than adequate, and it usually is. Here we go. Eric Segal, the legal eagle.
Hello.
Hey now.
Hey now. Long time no talk.
I know. It's been the longest we've ever gone, I think.
It's certainly tied for that. Or close to that.
You must have been on one of your trips.
No. You were the one who took vacation. Let's be clear. In fact, start the show that way. I'm going to start the podcast that way.
Okay, well, hold on a second. I am recording.
Okay.
And I just got off the phone with my dad, Chisel D, Chuck Dominic. He called me to tell me that he was going to get some new pants.
That's exciting.
Yeah. And I told him, he brought you up something because we were talking about something about abortion. And so he brought up something about you. And then I said, I'm about to call him. And he goes, well, you know what? I want to talk to him. He is my all-time favorite person to listen to. So I figured I would add him to the call real quick at the top. And he just wants to say some nice things. Do you mind?
I don't. I'm very flattered given the amazing.
Stand by. I'm going to try to get. You think he's in the mall, so we'll have a little fun with it. He's a 79-year-old man. Clothes shop. He's for new pants at the mall. Hold on.
I had mall trauma yesterday.
I heard. Here, I'll go. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Dad.
Yeah.
I've got Eric Segal on the line.
Hello, Mr. Dominic.
Hello, Mr. Segal.
How are you today,
Professor Segal? How you doing?
I'm Eric. To you.
I'm at Old Navy.
Oh,
I've never been in here. Never been in Old Navy. I'm trying to get some pants on, and I don't know, they're not working. So struggling. They have an elastic in the bottom.
Well, we won't take up too much of your time while you're clothes shopping. But I know you said you wanted to. You said you'd love to talk to Eric just to tell him how much you enjoy him. So I'm making that happen. I thought it would be a nice thing for listeners to hear because they love Eric. They love you. Go ahead, Dad. What did you want to say to Eric about his?
Do your listeners really love me?
Yep. As much as they love me, I'm sure.
No. I was telling Pete. I just talked to him. I says, "When's Eric Segal?" He was out today, and I said, "That's great because you're my favorite guy to listen to because." Now, unlike most people, you're very interesting. And I like to listen to you because you have a lot of interesting things to say. And your conversations with my son are epic. It's plain to see how well you guys actually love one another. And the content of what you talk about is really always good. It's always interesting to me. Maybe I'm a little biased, but, and I also respect your viewpoint and what you're doing. So that's I'm glad I got a chance to say that to you, actually. So thank you.
Well, that is too kind. I am I don't have the skill to tell you how flattered I am by that. And yes, I do love your son. And that was really nice to hear. And thank you. And please, I hope you don't have the mall trauma I had yesterday, taking my teenagers to get clothes at the mall.
Okay, nobody cares about that,
but
they do
nightmare.
care. There's one thing nobody cares. I know Dad's trying to buy some pants, apparently with elastic at the bottom. But one thing that my dad mentioned and that you've mentioned before, and we'll let you go, Dad, is he said he was talking to a friend of his, around his age, so he's like 104, and they were talking about how the atmosphere, the culture of abortion when they were younger, and how a friend of his apparently had to get an abortion. Is this right, Dad? And it was very dangerous. Dad,
how do we go from shopping pants to abortion in 104?
Well, because I'm hosting a pod. But here's the deal. Dad, you said you were talking to someone who said it was very dangerous to get an abortion when you were younger, right?
Yeah, I knew a girl when I was younger, and she had an abortion, and she described it to me, inch by inch and blood by blood. And it was horrific. And that's something that I don't hear people talking about. Abortions are going to be done, whether it's legal or not. And if it's illegal, it's going to be done by people who are not doctors. And it's going to be a horrible thing, and people are going to suffer and die. That's a fact.
You're right. One of the saddest parts of this whole debate is the idea that we can stop abortion by making it illegal. That has never worked. It won't work, and especially won't work in a world of medication abortions. It'll just make it much harder for poor people to get safe abortions. That's what's happening.
It's
terrible.
Dad, do you have any other questions about the Supreme Court while you're at the Old Navy dressing room?
I Pete, I listened to one of your podcasts when you had another professor on or somebody. I don't remember who it was, but it was so far over my head. I had no idea.
Supreme Myths. He was listening to Eric's podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. No, Eric.
I have a question. I have a question about skiing. Is 64 too late to learn?
No, I've had a lot of students that age. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. You may find me in your class someday.
Oh, that would be fun.
I can meet you where you want to go, and I will we'll go skiing together. That's what we'll do, and you'll be amazed at what a great athlete you really are.
I would be amazed, as in my entire family, and that would be fantastic. We'll talk about that.
Now, Eric, Eric will fly you right in and put you up at the guest house or whatever.
Hey, Mr. Dominic, really.
I can't wait to hear about your guest house. I'll get it on the podcast. Okay. Good talking, Eric.
Good talking to you, Mr. Dominic. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, keep up
bye,
the fight.
Dad.
Both of you.
Love
All
you.
right,
hang up now.
Okay. Love both you guys. Bye.
Well, that was awesome.
That was fun.
I'm very flattered by that because I know he listens to you, and I know you have amazing guests. So
I think one of the things that he likes, and I think other people like, is that you will always push back on anything I have to say. You'll talk over me. You'll be very firm, and some guests don't do that because they're being polite, even if they want to. And I think it's a more natural thing when it's more honest like that. And but people come on your show, they don't want to,
I met somebody last week who told me, a non-lawyer, who told me that the thing he likes most about my podcast is when I have, and I don't always do, but people with whom I always disagree on. Sure. And we have robust debate, but in a civilized, nice manner.
I need to do that more. I always just get worried that people come on the show and they say things that I know are not true, and I can't argue against them. And now I've platformed some, liar, conspiracy theorist, or grifter. That's always been my concern, and I don't know. I don't know what people think about that.
Yeah.
But
no, I mean, there are many famous people who disagree with me about a lot of things. I try to have people on who disagree with me and are not crazy, and who have a reasonable position. We just reasonably disagree on things. That's not always easy, but that's my goal.
Speaking of those, can we just start? You want to say something about the guest house first before I forget?
That's the very end.
Okay, so then
that way, yeah.
When we're, I guess I'm segueing into people. You said, people that aren't crazy.
Yeah.
You introduced me to the name Leonard Leo over a decade ago, and there is a massive...
Sorry.
You've been triggered. There is a massive news story out today, the New York Times with the scoop. Leonard Leo, who is the former head, he's still there, he's on the board of the Federalist...
Co-chair
Federalist Society. He got a super wealthy Republican donor, whose name is Bar Seed, S-E-I-D, I think. Yeah. He owns some tech firm. His company, I think, made millions selling power strips, like electric outlet power strips. Anyway, I don't know what else he did, but he got this rich Republican donor to give him the proceeds of a $1.6 billion corporate transaction to spend as dark money, which, of course, we know all about. Jane Mayer's book, structuring the sale so neither party paid taxes on the proceeds. More importantly than the transaction and the money and the not paying taxes, though, Eric, your take on what almost $2 billion to Leonard Leo means.
It's just a disaster beyond imagination. So just a little bit of background for the folks. Leonard Leo was the executive, I think his official title was executive something at the Federalist Society. This is before Trump, but he was in fact the person who ran the fundraising and leadership decisions of the Federalist Society. And everybody remembers Trump's famous list of nominees. I'll only appoint people like Scalia, originalists. Not that Donald Trump has any idea what the word originalist means. Well, frankly, most of us don't know what that means. But anyway, and that list helped get Donald Trump elected. And then Leonard Leo took a leave from the Federalist Society, allegedly, to sit in executive office building, old executive office building, and appoint judges. So Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, Barrett, this just horrific Judge Ho of the Fifth Circuit, H.O., and a bunch of other terrible judges all came to us via Leonard Leo. But eventually he left doing that, and then he started something. This is going to be hard to believe. He started something even worse. He started a nonprofit kind of organization. He would say, to make sure voting is safe and not fraudulent, but you and I know is all about voter suppression and drafting, statutes about voter ID and all this. Much of the stuff that happened after 2020 in Republican legislatures, including my own state, about making voting harder, much of that has been put into motion by or is attributable to, or certainly Leonard Leo is in favor of doing all of those things to make it harder for poor people to vote. And of course, if you make it harder for poor people to vote, then that has a disproportionate effect on people of color, and that has a huge effect on the elections, which helps the Republican Party. So this new money, because as of today, Leonard Leo is no longer in the business of picking judges because we have a president who's a Democrat. This is going to go to election stuff. And as, for example, Rick Hasen would say, Rick's been on your show.
Yeah.
Rick, I think, is by far the leading election law scholar in America. There are some others, Nick Stephanopoulos at Harvard and a couple others. But Rick would say, and I agree with him, that the 2024 election really could pose substantial risk to the continuing of the United States of America. And Leonard Leo is on the side of voter suppression. Make no mistake about that. So having $1.6 billion to do that is just a terrifying thing. The other thing is, and this may lead us into a daily conversation, Pete, I have no objection to people who are deeply religious. In fact, some of my best friends are deeply religious. I have a real problem with deeply religious people who want to impose their religion on others. Trust me when I tell you that Leonard Leo's vision of America is intertwined with imposing religion on others.
Yeah.
And that's a really scary thing.
What is does he have his own? Because I was talking about this with Jay Black and Noel Casler on today's episode, and, separating people who truly believe their religious views and those who are in power that want to use just your average.
Oh, no, he's worse than both of those things. No, he's sincere. I know people who know him. I'm very confident he is very sincere. And what he's very sincere about, and I'm going to forget the name, Pete, I apologize, but he's not just deeply religious. He belongs to a sect that is as far right, and I'm going to use this word that may get me in trouble. His sect is so far right that basically it's crazy. There was an HBO, I think, documentary or some documentary on some major channel about this and about this organization that
the Knights of Malta
belongs to. Yeah.
The Catholic order founded in the 12th century.
Yes, pretty much.
Yeah, I just found a piece at the Daily Beast titled "The Secrets of Leonard Leo, the man behind Trump's Supreme Court pick." He's a Catholic fundamentalist who controls a network of right-wing groups funded by dark money. And okay, go ahead. Yeah. Wow.
No, I'm just saying he's extreme.
Yeah,
he's he's a religious.
Well, he's the leader of Gilead, basically. A commander.
Right now, we can talk about that till we're blue in the face, but If he didn't have money, power, and the ability to affect elections, we wouldn't care. But he has all those things.
Right.
And that's a real problem. And, this whole, and I hate to bring this up, but, Justice Barrett also, not that same sect, but she also belongs to a very far right
Catholic.
It is Catholic. It's true, but it's not a typical Catholic sect. People for Praise is a very, very different thing. And all these people who are religious extremists who are getting into power or helping other people get into power is really hard. By the way, Pete, you and I wanted to mention this.
People of praise.
Times.
People of praise. That's Amy Coney Barrett's religious community.
I think that's the name of it. I'm having a senior moment, but I think that's the name of it.
Yeah.
Whatever it is,
Knights of Malta and People of Praise. Great. Go ahead. What were you saying? You and I what?
Well, no, I was going to lighten the conversation a bit which is hard to do, by saying that you and I, for many, many years, you said it first, and I agreed with you, that a self-avowed public atheist could never be elected president in America. Could not happen. Not today, anyway. Could not happen. In fact, an openly gay person would have a much better chance of getting elected than an atheist. Yet we've had an atheist president, and that's Donald J. Trump. He just won't admit it. And I find the irony of that terrifying.
Yeah, we may have had other atheist presidents who wouldn't admit it as well.
Fair. But we know Trump's not a man of faith.
Oh, he's a man. He loves Jesus. Ask him which is his favorite religious book. I like them both. New Testament.
I thought somebody once asked him what his favorite book. He couldn't even answer the question. What didn't he? Didn't what's her? That was Sarah Palin.
Yeah, it was.
Palin.
Was it Katie Couric?
Katie Couric asked Pam to mention a few books she couldn't mention.
He asked her to mention a newspaper. I think Katie Couric did.
Yeah,
but
anything.
Sarah Palin couldn't name a newspaper that she reads, and Donald Trump couldn't name a book other than The Art of the Deal and I think the Bible. Yeah,
I think that's right. Yeah. And right, I think that's right.
What else do you have to say about Leonard Leo, the Federalist Society? Because I want to ask you about Texas
all bad.
schools.
It's all bad. It's all terrible. One caveat. I do think there is a growing disconnect, maybe, between some of the rank and file of the Federalist Society, which is an organization that has thousands and thousands and thousands of lawyers and law students and judges. Leaving aside the judges part of that, we should probably include those too. I've met people who have said, no, I'm a conservative and I'm a Republican and I believe strongly in certain things, but I can't go along with Trump and I can't go along with the leadership supporting Trump. I'm hearing this more and more from Federalist Society people. So let's keep an eye on that. That might be interesting. If Trump gets the nomination, I will be interested to see what conservative FedSoc lawyers say and do. I think you will find some prominent ones coming out and saying, I can't support this man. But we'll see.
These powerful people like Leonard Leo, the Federalist Society, Donald Trump, and others are the types who are influencing ideas like this one from Axios. I'm reading. Texas schools, this is from yesterday, Texas schools have started receiving posters of the national motto, "In God We Trust," that they will be required to display in coordinates with a new state law.
It's beyond imagination.
We have talked about religion and prayer in school. We've talked about the Pledge of Allegiance under God, for which it stands, all that type of stuff. But I don't know. I guess my first question: did you ever think that there would be a mandate to put up "In God We Trust" displays?
No, probably not. I would have 2 years ago, 3 years ago, but not until Trump. No, I wouldn't have thought that. Now, let's be clear. What the law says is it has to be a privately donated sign or whatever that says "In God We Trust." Of course, that's not going to, most public schools in the state of Texas will now receive freely donated, posters or plaques saying "In God We Trust." Let's go back 5 minutes, Pete, not 5 minutes, but go back to this "On God We Trust" idea. So on our coins is "In God We Trust," every time, or that's just the thing. It is a motto of the United States. Justice William Brennan was a liberal icon of the 1960s, 70s, 80s. And he was very much in favor of separation of church and state, though he was a pretty devout Catholic. And he was pro-choice and all, not pro-choice, but he was for Roe versus Wade and so on. And Justice Brennan, I think it was in a dissenting opinion, but I could be wrong about that. When in one of these cases of religious symbols on government property or the government giving aid to religious schools, I think this was the case actually about legislative prayer, he dropped a footnote, but that footnote became very powerful. And he said, although I'm voting this way in this case, one could reasonably ask, what about in God we trust on coins? How is that constitutional? And Justice Brennan's answer, which I find totally unsatisfactory, again, this is a liberal person who believes in the wall of separation of church and state, said, well, that's kind of what he called ceremonial deism. Ceremonial deism. And in his view, our traditions and our histories, if we were starting over again, it'd be different. But given our history, things like in God we trust, generic nods to religion in official government settings are not always unconstitutional. Now, he did vote to say that legislative prayers were unconstitutional. But in God we trust on our coins, and we had coins back then that meant something, even he thought that was probably constitutional. But that is a whole, so I want to say that, and that's not an easy issue. We're going to take taking God, and under God and the Pledge of Allegiance would be the same thing, I think, Justice Brennan. But that's very different than putting in God we trust in our schools.
Why?
That's a whole different situation.
Why is it so different?
And I'm going to, and now this goes back to Justice Breyer. In two cases involving 10 Commandment displays, one involving a huge one in an Alabama courthouse and one involving a huge one on the Texas Capitol grounds. Justice Breyer, who wrote the opinion, made this kind of multi-factor test as to when religious symbols are on government property. Because, Pete, there are 10 commandments in the Supreme Court building. I mean, we have religious symbols all over this country in government buildings, in God we trust on coins, under God and the Pledge of Allegiance, etc. And one of the things Breyer said is from out of constitutional law, is what is being challenged here? Has it been around for 150 years and really didn't bother anybody until 5 years ago?
Right.
Or is it the kind of symbol that was placed here for political reasons to make a point? So in that two cases, he voted to strike down, and he won the Alabama 10 Commandments, because that was literally put there by a crazy judge to make a point. But as to the Texas 10 Commandments,
that crazy judge was Roy Moore, wasn't it?
Roy Moore. Yeah, very good, Pete. You get an A today.
Oh, well, he's the guy who was used to creep out teenage girls at the mall, and
yes,
the guy
among other things. Allegedly,
he's the reason why Alabama lost a Senate seat to.
Yes,
I'm forgetting his name. He only served one term. But
Jones.
Yeah, Jones.
Yeah. So my point here is we do not have a history of "In God We Trust" mottos in our schools at all, and we do have a history since 1963 of trying to make sure that there weren't prayers in our schools. So we know why this is happening in Texas. It's not ceremonial in that sense. It is to put religion back in the public schools. And it is a terrible idea. Now, given the praying coach decision this term, and given the 6 religious fanatics on the Supreme Court as we speak, I doubt they would find any problem with privately donated plaques saying "In God We Trust" in the public schools.
Right.
And that's quite the scary thing, I have to say. But Pete, this issue is not easy because, so I think Brennan's line was, I think this was also Justice Kagan's line, was pretty much, if a generic reference to God is one thing, a reference to Jesus, or even a reference to Judeo-Christianity is a whole different thing. But I don't buy that. And you and I have discussed this before. An atheist is just as offended by "In God We Trust" as a Jewish person or a Muslim person is offended by the government putting a giant cross on its property, which the government has been allowed to do.
They certainly have. I am. I mean, I don't like it.
Right. the culture wars are just killing us. I was just reading a kind of not about religion, but just as before you and I started talking, we're taping this on Monday, some slides that Florida teachers have prepared to comply with this new Florida law, which really circumvents what teachers can teach in Florida about race and gender and LGBTQ rights, etc. It is terrifying, people. I mean, you have to be in Florida. They have to be so careful. Georgia has a statute that, thank God, does not apply to colleges and
well, you're talking about
schools.
these slides. The Miami Herald, I think, is reporting on this, and I'll be talking. I should mention, with the most one of the most important people in all of Florida's education, the president of the Florida Teachers Union, Florida Education Association, Andrew Spar, on tomorrow's show about this and the rest of crazy Florida. But the slides are about how to teach certain parts of our history, especially things like slavery and the Civil War and things like that, right?
Right. And
founding fathers' vision and a bunch of other bullshit.
Part of the problem is that the directions are extremely vague and imprecise. And you know what teachers shouldn't have to, all teachers, from kindergarten to graduate school, teachers shouldn't have to worry about being fired for discussing controversial issues. Now, if they're bad teachers, they should be fired. And if they teach controversial issues in a way that is bad, then that's a problem. But that's not what this law is about.
Well, I mean, I might know what this law is about, but I got, very involved in the school board fight here. And the argument, what parents don't understand is that teachers don't teach you what they think. They teach you how to think more than anything else. So they present the history and then you can think however you want about it. But, that's more than anything else. That's what they teach. And there's a discussion in the classroom and they debate things. I mean, that's what fucking school is. Sorry.
It's worse, but this is really bad because my understanding is you're not really allowed to say in Florida schools anymore that it was white people who enslaved black people. Like, you can talk about slavery generically and how bad it is, but you're not really allowed to attribute blame as if somehow white people were not completely responsible for the enslavement of black people. It's really terrible. And I can't even imagine how you would teach the Civil War under these conditions. I mean, I think one might have to be neutral as to whether it was a civil war, for example, or the War of Northern Aggression, which is what many Southerners, still call it. So, so it's just terrible. And I do think it is related to religion in that it's part of this culture war that is going on right now.
It's also, you keep mentioning the culture war and the idea of political correctness. What could be more politically correct than not wanting to say the race of the enslaver because you don't want to hurt people's feelings. Exactly. I mean, like, it's politically correct if they don't like it. It's woke if they don't like it. It's all a language game and they are masters at it. But when in effect, they are the ones who are controlling speech. And even in the schools, that's not political correctness. I mean, it's fascism is what it is. But
now I think, to be fair, there are many people on the left who are guilty of, they're not in government. So, they don't have the control of the legislatures, but who also go too far in saying certain speech is dangerous when really we should just have more speech to deal with it. The whole controversy involving what do teachers do with old books, or in my case, old cases that use the N word. I am not taking a position on this issue. I'm just saying it's a complicated issue. It's a hard issue. For many people on the left, it's not a hard issue. For them, it's a white person can never use it. Full stop. I don't care. Don't tell me the context. It's wrong. Don't use it. And how do you teach how do you treat Mark Twain if you don't use the N? I mean, it's just very tough.
Well, you don't have to say it. I mean, you don't get rid of the book.
Yeah, you could say the N word, but that might be okay. That might be okay for Mark Twain, although I don't think so. But there are cases where the use of the N word is what's at issue in the case. and the power of that word. But anyway, all I'm saying is, but it doesn't matter because those people aren't passing laws censoring. So it's not
right. Yeah, they're not the ones that are pulling these books off the shelves.
It's not.
Yeah, right.
Right. It's not. It's not the same thing.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, it really isn't. And I really fear for what's happening. I would like to think the cycles of American history show there will be a backlash to all this, favorable to people who think we should teach history accurately. But that may take a long time. I don't know if our country will survive the 2024 election. But if we do, I do think that there may be a backlash to all this. So right now we're living in an insane period of time. And by the way, really on both sides. I've told this before on this podcast, to be fair. I met a woman who teaches criminal law at University of Alabama Law School. She's a very good law school, the flagship institution in Alabama of all places. And she told me she could no longer teach the criminal elements of rape in her first year of criminal law course. Because any discussion of rape, the students complained, was too triggering for women who have been raped. Now,
that's worth at least a discussion. I mean,
not to me.
Yeah,
not to me.
It's not worth a discussion to have. Yeah, it is. It's worth a discussion to say if this type of subject matter is upsetting to you, maybe you should take this class or listen to this lesson.
No, of course, no. I'm sorry, I misspoke. Of course, if I'm a criminal law professor and I'm going to teach a couple segments on rape,
yeah.
I have no problem saying to the class, if this is too hard for you, I understand.
Yeah, that's what I meant by it's worth a discussion about, we're going to be talking about.
I'm not going to teach what's on the bar exam because you might be triggered. I mean, that's, and I'm not
sure who's making that argument or where they're making that argument, much less how
students at law school. It's fairly pervasive.
Is it really?
So
I'm not looking into how pervasive that is.
Emory University
sounds
around
like
the corner.
One scholar.
No. Emory University around the corner from my house. At one point, they've allowed sidewalk art forever. Just something kids do. Technically, it's against Emory's rules, but they've allowed sidewalk slogans, art forever. And then one day there was sidewalk slogans about Trump favorably, and the administration washed it out and said you couldn't do this. And Pete, there was a history of allowing sidewalk art at Emory. And the rationale for this was that any nod towards Trump was triggering to people of color and LGBTQ people. I get that. I think he's horrific. But the answer to that is not to wipe away his name from the sidewalk, thereby violating a practice that's gone on for a very long time. There are other answers to that. So I think the problem
include vandalizing the sidewalk art with your own thoughts, which is exactly what I'm encouraging high school students to do to these "In God We Trust" posters that they're going to be put up.
That's a great idea.
If those were put up in my high school, I would have a field day with them.
Right. I think that's
would just, I don't know. I mean, there's so many. I'm going to talk to Wajid Ali. I mean, there's so many easy things to do, but just talk about the God that isn't the dominant God in that school, and you'll prove your point, which is what you've made that point many times.
I want to make one more point about religion. A professor named Corinna Lane, Lain, at the University of Richmond Law School, who I would disclaim as a close personal friend, wrote one of the best law review articles I've ever read, and I've read thousands of them. And it was very empirical. It wasn't a judgmental article. And it was about 4 years ago. And what she said, and this surprised everybody. Legal scholars were uniformly surprised by this. The most controversial case in American history, according to social science data and research, in terms of who reacted and when and how strongly, not Roe and not even Brown. It was the two decisions in 1962, where the court said prayer in school was unconstitutional. And she has all kinds of data about this. That those two cases generated more protest and more resentment and more anger and more counter protest than any cases in American history. I know. I thought so too. The reality is, Pete, those cases are often ignored, especially in Southern and Midwestern schools. And the ACLU can only bring so many lawsuits. There's only so many resources they have. But I spent a lot of time in Opelika, Alabama, lots, and Auburn, Alabama. and we would drive by public. I was there at Christmas often for the holidays because my ex-wife had family there, and so we'd be there for Christmas. I cannot tell you how many creches and Christmas trees and those kinds of things I saw in the public schools in Alabama. And technically that would be illegal. A Christmas tree would be on the line, but certainly a creche would be illegal. We see them there all the time. So
what about Jesus dressed as Santa?
Yeah.
That's probably on the, somewhere.
We are a religious country in the craziest of ways. Okay, I'm going to say something that got me a lot of trouble. I think the gap between how fervently people fight for religion here and how sincere people's faith is here is very large. I think it's a political weapon in a lot of cases.
No doubt about it. The thing that bothers me the most is the Bill Maher's and others of the world who constantly rail about Islam. And I've said so many times, I don't like any religion, really, not for me. And in its most fundamental form, and when it's part of the state, when it's a theocracy to some extent, or when it's heavily influential in public, it's really, really bad. That's the worst kind. And so I don't like any very religious institution or fundamentalist idea, certainly not to be practiced. But the thing that bothers me the most, Eric, is what we have in America isn't a threat from Islam or Judaism. It's a certain, be very specific, brand of Christianity that, as you know, and as you've taught me, is so patriarchal, so anti-woman, so anti-gay, and so medieval. Why are we talking about other religions when there are very few Muslims, much less Jews, and the Jews that are in power are certainly not using it in Congress, for law? It's all Christians, and it's Christians who are controlling our rights. And that's the religion that we should be worried about, or certain brand. I say that and think about that all the time. It bothers me when we focus on religions that don't have power and influence in this country very much. Certainly not.
Well, a couple of reactions. First, well said. I think there are, it's not a religious thing, but certainly when it comes to Israel, the Jews have a lot of power and a lot of influence. And our policy.
No doubt about it. And they're way too.
Policy,
yes. Yeah. Friendly to Israeli policy. And
yes. So I want to be clear. I think that's fair. The other thing I want to say.
But that has to do with our Middle East foreign policy, which there's a lot to say about. What we don't have is Jewish congressmen saying we're going to make, Shabbos the law. They should. That we should have a day, sundown to sunup, where we don't do work. I kind of like it.
Though Orthodox Jews still don't let women be rabbis, which I've written about, which is horrific.
Right, but I'm saying they don't pass a law in the state of New York or wherever they're most powerful that affects me because I'm not Jewish.
Fair. And the other thing I want to say about your monologue, which was excellent, is we've gone full circle now to Leonard Leo, who is exactly who you're describing.
Yeah. Well,
and now he has $1.6 billion. In addition, by the way, the Times article had a couple of deficiencies in it. One is it called him a former Fellow Society person. The website, I checked the website this morning. This is Monday. I checked the website this morning. It says he is co-chair of the board. So for the New York Times to report he's no longer with the Fellow Society seems to me to be...
They should issue a correction.
They should. Yeah. Second, it's not $1.6 billion. It's $1.6 billion plus all the money he already has, which is a tremendous amount of money. This is a serious threat to a pluralistic America.
And when you find out how that dark money is used, it's
terrifying.
That story today was one of the most important stories, impactful stories, not unlike, hey, the climate legislation that just passed. These seem like one day stories. The climate legislation for good reasons, this Leonard Leo donation from a rich right-wing crazy for bad reasons will have reverberations on our lives for generations, and they're one day stories.
Pete, I remember, and then what I remember that when Citizens United came out, and then not just Citizens United, but later cases more importantly came out, you always said, and you said it really well, that, this is the most fundamental issue there is, because if our elections aren't, everything, this is it. I mean, if our elections aren't fair, reasonably fair, nothing's perfect, but reasonably fair, then there's nothing else to do. We're lost. And I'm telling you, Leo's objective here is to make sure people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, the nutcase from Georgia, who basically has now come out openly for a Christian country, is supporting people like her. And that is, I'm not saying, I have no personal knowledge, to be clear. Leo is supporting Marjorie Taylor Greene, but that is the kind of candidate he wants to see.
He's certainly not trying to primary her.
Right.
Well, let me ask you about your most recent blog at Dorf on Law, which is very, very good for a lot of reasons.
Pete, I got cut you off, and I apologize. I apologize to everybody listening. I do have to take a kid to a thing in about 5 minutes.
Well,
so
I was only going to say we need to talk more about number 2 in your list. Our Constitution is virtually impossible to amend and extremely old. So we'll talk about that next time. But read Eric's most recent piece, which is, has to do with why the Supreme Court is not a court, which you wrote a whole book about. And
with new information, though. Yeah. New information.
With new information, new improved.
Yes.
All right,
new and improved.
Go be dad, and thank you very much for joining me as always, buddy. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Pete. It's been too long. Thanks,
right.
I appreciate it.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Well, there you go, Eric Siegel at Eastman Siegel. Go say hello to him. And wasn't that fun hearing from my dad putting them together? I thought that was a poignant moment. Poignant moment number 2 on today's show earlier. Got to play Glenn Kushner holding his granddaughter in front of everybody. And finally, here on today's show, very excited to share with you the final installment of Annoying American Abroad. This is our good friend, contributor, voiceover, actor, and artist who's just booked his first big gig as narrating a children's book. We're very excited for him. Hope to congratulate him, at least virtually, on Thursday night. But here he is, The Annoying American Abroad, the final installment where Tico goes to Finland, and you are not going to want to miss the end of this. So stay for the whole, I think, 10 minutes here. Here we go.
Annoying American Abroad. Welcome to the third installment of Annoying American Abroad, where we're currently annoying the bejesus out of Finnish people in Helsinki, their bustling capital city. Lots of things to do here, like sample traditional cuisine, drink lots of coffee, and also drink coffee. I plan on checking out the well-known Rock Church as well, a place where the worshiping happens within recessed walls of stone. The sound quality is such that many Finnish music legends prefer it to the wide-open, beer vendor-driven amphitheaters. Let's go see. Okay, so it turns out, odd as it seems, they wouldn't let us record inside the Rock Church, even after explaining everything about who I was and what this segment was all about. Shockingly, they refused to accommodate us, but we're recording now, and with me to talk about it and other stuff is an actual Finnish person, my friend Hanna. How's it going today?
Hello, it's going great.
The Rock Church is pretty cool. Describe, if you will, the church in Rock.
Yes, so I used to work there for a long time, and it's this unique, beautiful place in nature inside the city, but it was actually built inside solid rock, and the idea was to bring natural light in and just highlight the nature around the space. So it's this magnificent place, very different kind of church.
And you used to work there. What was your role there exactly?
I was a tour guide, sort of, who would explain things about the church and the architecture and things around it, and would kind of handle the masses of people between church services and weddings. And it's a very, very popular wedding place, for example. So that's what I did.
And there's music a lot of times there, like musical performances?
Yes, absolutely. So the architecture put a lot of effort to create a space with amazing acoustics. So lots of concerts and different kinds of music has been played there. For example, we have had metal mass when a church service is, instead of traditional hymns, the music has been arranged into heavy metal form. So when that happened, the church got packed and not everyone could fit in. So we have had famous heavy metal musicians and different kinds of musicians have concerts and services there.
Heavy metal being a very big deal in this country. I've seen a lot of men with long blonde hair.
That's very popular.
Very true. You truly notice in Finland that heavy metal is a big thing, and it has to be brought into everything, even church services. So.
I would be remiss without mentioning that you were also married at the church.
Yes.
And as I understand, there was a bit of a hiccup with the vows.
Very true. First of all, I don't know who wants to get married at their workplace, but I did because it's such a unique space and my favorite church. But yes, right at the most important moment when the pastor asks, will you take so-and-so to be your wedded husband, the pastor pulled out a total random name. And I and my to-be husband looked at each other and smiled, and I was trying to give the pastor like signals with my eyes, like, that's the wrong guy, that's not his name. And finally, after a few seconds, she remembered the right name. And I got married to the right person.
They could have at least done what I think any person in the United States would have done, which is to just name a famous movie star or a music star if they were going to forget the name anyway. So they could have just said Tom Cruise or anything. So they didn't say Tom Cruise or somebody like that.
No, that would have been cool though.
Yeah.
If they did. Yeah.
Well, we had a lovely last dinner in Helsinki, and we have you and your family to thank for that. Describe what we ate.
Oh, it was indeed lovely, and we will treasure the memories of that too. It was actually salmon. Finns eat a lot of fish, and with this creamy lemon and pepper sauce and some new potatoes. In Finland, not much grows, so in the summer when we get like potatoes, it's a big deal because they taste really different and they're really yummy. So that was the dinner and with the salad, and then we had for dessert we had a traditional cake with strawberries and cream that also Finns they love in the summer, because the strawberries, I know many things in California are much better than in Finland, but strawberries, I have to say, we win. So those are so sweet and delicious in the summer, so you have to have that cake, and you did.
Yes, it was very good, and we were able to sample some other traditional Finnish cuisine since our stay here. We had the salmon soup, which I enjoyed very much. I had that a couple of times.
Right.
And there's the meat pies. What else did we sample? Where's the
little fish that I forgot the name in English. It's called muikku in Finnish. Remember?
Oh, right. They're like little deep-fried smelt.
Yes. Yeah. So those we had, and then Finnish food is quite like plain and simple, mild flavors, but some things are good.
And did the meat pies have the reindeer meat in it or not?
No, but we did have reindeer meat at the very first breakfast at our place. Right. But no, meat pies don't have usually reindeer meat, and you find more reindeer meat up north in Lapland. The next time you are coming, we're going to Lapland, which is another story.
Yes. Well, that'll be hopefully another segment of Annoying American Abroad. We'll have a Lapland edition, for
Absolutely.
Sure. We should also mention, before we end it, the world-class gas station food here in Finland, and the pride of Finland, Hesburger. Are you prepared to place it ahead of such American legends as McDonald's and Burger King?
I would say so. I used to work at one when I was a student, so I think it goes right up there with McDonald's and Burger King for sure.
In-N-Out burger level?
I would put In-N-Out in a more superior category, I have to say. Just my... Because, I happen to love that one, so...
Food-wise?
Food-wise, yes.
Not ownership-wise?
No, food-wise. I would put In-N-Out on top of all of those, actually. Yeah, Hesburger, unfortunately, sorry. In everything, Finns don't win, so...
I can't freeze-dry the Hesburger and take it back with me. They would probably wrestle me to the ground at Finnish Customs.
I think you might end up in trouble.
Yeah.
Helsinki, a world-class city, and we barely scratched the surface. I don't think there's any sort of reindeer antler hat or bottle opener I could purchase that could accurately express my love and admiration for Finland and its people. Perhaps I'll just have to live with the glorious earworm that will forever live in my brain, the Finnish version of the theme song to the cartoon DuckTales, reinforcing the notion that there's a Finnish version to just about everything.
Vauhtimesta hurin on Ankka linna, aina täynnä säpinä on Ankka linna. Arvoitus raukee ja ansat laukee, ansat oh!
Annoying American abroad.
There you have it. That's all I've got for you on today's show. And look at that. Almost an hour and 45 minutes worth of amazing, informative, entertaining, thought-provoking conversation. Hopefully you appreciated it, and I look forward to having you come back here tomorrow. If you want to contribute to the show, pitch me an idea. StandUpWithPete.com. You want to support the show, same website. And still coming up this week, Dave Rothkopf, Wajid Ali, Amy Westerveld, Virginia Heffernan, Dr. Aaron Carroll, Bill B. in D.C., Anya Kamenetz, Andrew Spar, and maybe more. Christian Finnegan, I hope, and Ophira, we'll see. Listen and subscribe right now. I love you guys. Thank you for waiting for me to come back, supporting my time off. I can't do it without you. Be the change that you want to see in the world, and I'll talk to you right here tomorrow. John Carroll, take us out and go buy this song, everybody. $3, johncarroll.org. Go right now. Thank you, John.
She gotta stand up, stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You gotta stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. Point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of a stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We got to let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. While you lying awake wondering where the money all went, it'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right. We got to speak up, we got to reach up, and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be froze up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run